So, welcome to today's episode. Today, we've got a very exciting guest, Markus Lampinen. Markus is a San Francisco based serial entrepreneur and the CEO of Prifina Inc. With a strong background in software, data, and artificial intelligence. He's founded multiple startups in fintech and content rights, and is an investor in several pioneering new products in markets such as fintech, data, and geopolitics. Passionate about personal freedom and data ownership, he sees the current market as a fundamental opportunity for each of us. And for those of you rather, just joining the podcast, we at Strativa AI help businesses scale their revenue over 12 months using AI. So if you want to learn how to take your business to the next level, make sure to stick around for future episodes. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop the word growth into the DMs. So now, Markus, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got started in your field?
No, first of all, thank you, Mark, for having me and for that spectacular introduction. I was just thinking back that when I actually started studying, it was such a different era. Like I studied computer science and economics, but we were learning to build things or understand computer networks and systems at such a different position than where we are right now, where everything right now is basically being reimagined with AI. I mean, it's a fantastic era to be in. So I've been involved and interested in computers and new products and new innovations for a long time. When I was studying, I created my first company, which was on organizing different types of rights. So entertainment rights, movie rights, music rights, so on and so forth, specifically at the era that streaming services and piracy networks were a big thing. So
Interesting.
way different than now. But then through a number of different kind of trial and errors and trials by fire, then I've been able to kind of focus on keep on the data vertical and just look at like, how can we, by harnessing data better, how can we create solutions that consumers and businesses actually find value from? But that data part, that's been kind of the commonality leading up until now. And certainly now, I don't think that's going to be any lesser going forward.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And so at Prifina, what is it that you guys do?
Yeah. So at Prifina, we provide AI twins for anyone. So what is an AI twin? An AI twin is an AI system that you control. It's something that at Prifina, we're not a model developer. So we don't want any of your data. We want you to have and own that data. It's yours. But then using an AI twin, what you can do with that data first, kind of on the outset publicly, is you can use certain type of things, for example, about your job, let's say what you always get asked about. You can teach that to your AI twin, and then it can field those questions for you in any language. Very simple utility. But we've noticed that once you kind of get in the hang of essentially looking at what are the bits that you repeat in your everyday life, whether or not work or, making dinner, different kind of household things, different things that your kids ask you about all the time, then once you kind of get into that mindset of like, can my AI twin do this for me? Then you kind of start realizing that, okay, you're kind of starting to coexist with this AI twin. So our vision is that billions of people in the future, everybody's going to have their own AI twin. And what we want to do is we really want to empower people to kind of get on this journey with the AI twin themselves in a way that they're in the driver's seat. So not necessarily in that sense that you're handing off the keys to the kingdom to every single company that you work with, but rather that essentially you end up with something that actually is yours and it becomes part of your ways of working. And this is really key for us. Like when I was talking about my own background in terms of focusing on data, then this is kind of where you have to take the data and separate it out from the application. So our view is very much the data is yours. And if you power this AI twin that we provide for you, fantastic. But in the future, if you wanted to take that data and go and do something else with it, I mean, absolutely. It's not ours, it's yours. And that's something that I think going forward with AI, the only way to actually make it represent you is to start at the heart in terms of the data and just making sure that individuals have this as part of their own toolkit. Yes, but maybe even more so identity going forward. Because if you have enough context about what it is that you want, and what are the roles and the hats that you wear, I think that's going to be hugely valuable in essentially reimagining how we as individuals work and behave in the future, where AI is part of everything that we do.
And so with it being a part of everything, it sounded as though it could be the AI twin could be both with your work aspects and your personal life aspects, correct? Yeah. And
Think
then,
about
so
kind of
like with it, how does someone interact with it? And like, how does it discern between those two where you might want your twin to not always talk about your personal life to work people or something?
yeah. That's a great question. The way that we look at it is that very similar to us humans, and the twin is just going to have different roles. Like it's going to have its job hat, it's going to have its family hat, it's going to have its relative hat, it's going to have its athlete hat, just different roles that you have in your everyday life. And then I think the reality is also that, in different circles that you are, then people behave differently. Like, I mean, yes, there are these lines that, people, especially when you're talking about software, people will give it a go. They'll test it out and they'll, throw in some wacky questions here and there. So there's
Right.
definitely like the instructions that you give it in terms of how you want it to behave. But people actually looking at the interactions across the universe of AI twins, I mean, people typically, if they kind of look at it, it's like it's Mark Strativa, job role AI twin. I mean, most of the time they're going to ask questions that are ultimately self-serving for them. So they're going to ask things about like, okay, what can Mark help me with? What is Strativa's guidance here? Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And they're necessarily going to ask you about Napa wines or something like that. I mean,
Right.
some might, but I think that's the easiest way to think about it, that at the end of the day, they're going to just have different roles. And then you're going to choose also where you use it. Because in some roles, like let's say that you're preparing for Thanksgiving dinner, you got all your relatives and you're going to go through the same 20 questions with every single one of your cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff.
Right.
So you could 100%.
Like literally when you're at Thanksgiving, people are like, give me the download of your year.
So you could essentially just share that ahead of time, or maybe in that Christmas letter or something like that, and just say that, hey, if you're wondering about like what I've been up to, then here's the highlights, but you can also talk to this AI twin. Now, that's kind of like one of these things that, especially in a personal setting, then we all have the same 24 hours a day. And I've kind of grown up in this entrepreneur hat that, it's not so much about like, what is your job or what function do you play? It's rather like, how do you use it in those 24 hours? Those 24 hours, I mean, it's the choices that you have to make every single hour, every single minute. That's kind of what's important to you. And at the heart of that, that's where the AI twin needs to sit as well. So we have this interesting aspect of like public, like where you're on stage or you're on a website and then somebody's interacting with you and you don't necessarily know who's interacting with you. Like it might be a new sales prospect. It might be somebody that's interested in just learning about you. Then you have like the more private permissioned network, which is like those people that your friends and family and relatives and so on and so forth. Those that, you're not sharing essentially knowledge to everybody, but you're essentially giving it to certain people and then they'll log in and they'll discuss that. So this is sort of like the private AI aspect.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that when it comes to you as the individual, then I mean, the AI twin is also a remarkable resource, because one of the things, and this is not something that we've done yet, but one of the things that we've been thinking about is that the AI twin, as you teach it certain things, then if we extrapolate like multiple years into the future where the AI twin kind of grows up beside you, then I think it's going to have this chronological aspect to it as well, that who you were 5 years ago is going to be reflected in the AI twin. So we've been thinking of this concept of like a time capsule, that it's also a super cool thing to kind of be able to have a conversation with you 5 years ago. You're like, just have an inner monologue with yourself, but where you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or, things like that.
Yeah.
So I think all of these elements are important, but it really just depends on the individual and what is like the priority for them. And that's kind of where it comes back to the very roots of our company, that it's not our job to decide. It's the individual that takes the AI twin. Each individual is different. They're going to have different priorities, but the AI twin essentially should meet them where they are and allow them to start from what's the most meaningful for them.
And so how big is your company?
So these AI twins, there's lots of them. They've really focused on more experts and these people that are on stage so far. So there's not billions yet, but we're working there. It's growing very, very fast. So it's growing between 15 and 25% week on week in terms of the activity. And there are several thousands of these AI twins right now in the marketplace.
Okay.
Our team itself is very small. So we're just
that's what I was wondering too.
We're just about 15 people in the company. And I think it's also one of those things that we've just got really, really efficient in terms of, I mean, every startup has to be efficient, but also in terms of how do we utilize all of the new AI tools. Um, and this shouldn't be surprising for an AI company or a company that's so kind of in this as we are, but it's still very fascinating in a way that how much more you can actually get done nowadays
Yeah.
by just utilizing every single thing that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And so when did you guys launch?
We launched this AI twin about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So it had a previous version before that, which we were prototyping. But the moment in time was when one of my co-founders, he basically just did a keynote for an event. This is 2023 then, sometime during the summer. And then he essentially had created his own AI twin. And he had on one of the slides, he had a QR code that said that if you have any questions about what I'm talking about here, then you can scan this QR code and you can ask my AI twin.
Wow.
And he showed me this the day before and he said that, what do you think? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, might be a gimmick. Like, I don't know. I was like, well, no harm testing. So then he goes on stage, 3,500 people. He has this kind of slide
That's a
that,
good sized crowd.
yeah, and he's kind of just like going through it. And then at the end, he said that he had no idea how people responded. So at the end, he has a line of people kind of, just seeking to talk to him. And then
Okay. Like a
the
question and
talent,
answer session afterwards or something.
and what they're saying is that, hey, I had so many questions. And then my friend's like, okay, well, let's have it. Like, I'm glad to answer them. Consistently, every single one is like, no, I already asked you. Like, it's fine. Like, I already got what I need. And we looked at the data afterwards, and it was phenomenal. Like, out of
Wow.
the 3,500 people there are like over 400 that signed up for their own AI twin. And the interactions were in every single language, which
Wow.
is so fascinating.
That is
Was kind of
fascinating.
like the spark for that. But
Uh-huh.
imagine how universal that is. Like you're somewhere and, you're talking right now. So if you're having a speech or then you're doing, let's say you're on another call or somehow else engaged, then just having this ability that you don't have to wait. Like you
Yeah.
can just the answer from this AI twin, which, it's got its own personality, it's got its own quirks. So it might not always be the same that the human would give, but it's kind of instantly there. It's in any language. And it's basically something that is accessible by anybody. So that really kind of lit the spark for us. But if you think about like the universality of this and coming back to like everybody's different, that's a really unique part that when you essentially just explain to people that, hey, if you want an AI twin, go to Prifina.com, sign up, test it out for free, see what you'd use it for. Then you start seeing these applications that are just like they're night and day. And I think that's kind of the biggest, most exciting things that we see, that if you can really harness what it is that makes us human, like that very subjective humanness, especially now when we have LLM this and LLM that all the time. I mean,
Mm.
that's a fascinating thing to be able to kind of really, really highlight with these AI twins because they all become personal. And
Yeah.
my AI twin isn't really me. It's kind of its own independent entity that has a lot of my knowledge, but it's developed its own personality in a way, which I
Sure.
find fascinating. But it's sort of like, reimagining what is the household staff through AI and then
Yeah.
having your AI twin be almost like the orchestrator for you.
And I assume you can continually update it, tweak it, add to its knowledge base, et cetera, right?
That's right. You can
Yeah.
just keep going all the time in as small iterations or as large iterations as you want.
And then is the interaction with the user voice?
It depends. So it starts off as text because
Uh-huh.
chat and text is like the easiest thing to kind of for anybody to adopt. But then after that, you can do voice, you can do avatars, you can do WhatsApp, you can do text messages, you can do a number of different types of interfaces. But it really kind of comes down to then what is the use case? So if you're, for example, like I was talking to one guy yesterday who's a business owner, and he said that on the call, he said that he's got 48 unanswered WhatsApp messages that he needs to go back to, that he just wants to integrate the AI twin into his WhatsApp number so that it would respond immediately. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we can 100% do that. So it's really about like, where is the interaction? What is the interface that you've got? And if it's in that type of a setting with, let's say, business customers, then WhatsApp might be natural. It might also be your website. You go to the website and then you essentially have it integrated there. And then you can ask, let's say, the CEO or then the top business owner or somebody else questions about their products. But I think over time, it's really going to be a question of just meeting the audience where they are. That different audiences, they like different ways of talking. One thing I will say, however, is we've noticed that there's a lot of over engineering on the AI side as well. Like we can make really, really fancy systems. Like I was talking to one guy, fantastic technologist, who had created his own fine-tuned, basically AI duplicate of himself. And this was running a fine-tuned large language model on his own setup. And it basically had avatars and voice and everything integrated into it. It was absolutely fantastic from a technology point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Problem with that was that it cost about $4,500 a month just to run, even though like, he'd orchestrated all this, and it took about 2 months to set it up. So then there's kind of this aspect that for somebody that's a technologist, where it's part of their brand, that makes total sense. But if we're talking about 1 billion people, then you have to kind of make the adoption as simple as possible.
Yeah.
A lot easier to add to it. But if you make the learning curve really, really tricky, I think that just that just slows people down. And we don't want to do that. We just want to make sure that this is actually something that kind of step by step they get comfortable with, they understand what it's for and what it can do for them. But then also during that time, then if they wanted to kind of do something else, then it'll be easier to say that, hey, okay, I tested out X, Y, and Z, and this is why I'm on text messages, for example, or so on and so forth.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, sort of land and expand approach where the user's testing something out, they've landed in that spot, they see that they like it, and then they say, I could also use it in this aspect of my business or what have you, right? And take it wider. I see. And with the kind of like the huge range that you mentioned, that individual who built it out for such an expensive amount, and you mentioned at the beginning that there's try it out for free, and then where does it land after that for someone that has landed in that spot and they're happy with it, right? I assume you have a subscription service. Like what does that look like, and how soon to get them ramped up into an actual twin that they're happy with for that initial use case?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right in the assumptions. There's a 30-day period in terms of free, and then it's $24 a month for an AI twin. So it's very, very simple. There's
super affordable.
Yeah, and there's a pro subscription as well, which is $49. That's mainly for teams if you're connecting multiple of them together. So they have some additional stuff there. You had this question of like how long until they're happy with it. And I think this is also it's not really a technology question. It's rather like figuring out how it fits into your life question. So we often encourage to start small, like teach it something super simple, like upload your resume, your profile, and then upload something that you're interested in, like maybe something you wrote, maybe your company's website, maybe, whatever it is. And then with that, I mean, the twin learns in seconds, so that's not going to take any time. So you just drag and drop it in, and then it picks it up. But then after that, the most interesting thing is when you essentially give it to somebody. You say that, hey, here's my AI twin. It's still in beta. It's still learning, but ask it some questions. And then when you hand it to like 5 folks, like your friends, your colleagues, whoever, then you actually find that they're asking questions that you didn't think about. Like they start asking it questions for like, things that, well, I'll give you an example. Like my colleagues use my AI twin a lot for different types of submissions, where you have to write like, an elevator pitch about the company, about section about the company, a description in 700 words, things like that. That's what I see a lot of my colleagues use my AI twin for. And then a lot of customers will use it for like, hey, I got the AI twin, but I'm finding this hard, or I'm stuck here. So they use it as a customer support. So that's kind of the biggest thing, that once you kind of get it out there and you see the reaction from your audience, and you see that either it's exactly as you imagined, or then most likely it's slightly different, then that's probably the biggest aha moment that people have, because then they start thinking, okay, I should teach it more about this, or maybe I should essentially find another place where I position this. So the good news is that can be very quick. Like you can be up in 24 hours in terms of testing already. Then the bigger thing is that it takes a little time for people to figure out, like, okay, which part of my life would benefit the most? Like maybe it is a job function, and maybe there in the job function, it's similar to having like your own mini FAQ, wiki, LinkedIn profile, whatever, where essentially people go and they can ask you questions that they don't necessarily need you live for, but they just need to essentially have access to things that you know. So that could be one. But I think this is kind of the biggest thing, that there's still a learning element as it comes to what personal AI is, because you have all sorts of enterprise AI, but especially when you're thinking about this, when it is for the individual first, then I think that that's also something that we recognize, that really thinking about it as a learning process is helpful, because it's not just about learning how this particular AI twin works. It's about how does your life work in the future when you have access to these systems wherever you are. And where it's not a question of like, do you adopt them? It's rather a question of how do you adopt them? And I think at this stage in the market, this can be a huge differentiator for individuals, that knowing how their own setup is going to work in the future, that can essentially be a huge asset in terms of being more productive, yes, but also being kind of familiar with how these tests, how to optimally use these tools. Because I think that that's going to be a huge shift in the workforce, that, you're going to basically be expected to do a lot more, but you're also going to be expected to be native with a lot of these methodologies and the ways that AI and large language models in general work.
Mm-hmm. And how do you foresee the future of the AI twins interacting with each other? Like, say, my AI twin and yours, or
Sure.
two coworkers' AI twins working.
It's a fascinating kind of thought experiment, but I will emphasize that this isn't theoretical. So I already have basically my AI twin that I can communicate with via WhatsApp and SMS and so on and so forth, but I can also send it emails. And it's a fascinating thing where essentially I copy my AI twin on emails, and then one of my colleagues says that, okay, hey, why don't you two figure this out together? And then they put in the email their own AI twin and my AI twin. It becomes a practical dialogue where they essentially just get some instructions in terms of like, create this presentation or create this, and then they take it away, and then they come back saying, okay, this is where we got to. So it's actually no different than me talking to the AI twin. It's just another AI twin talking to the AI twin. And as long as they have the task and they know what they should be doing, then they're just pulling from the context in terms of what they've been trained with. And then they're coming up with essentially a type of consensus for whatever task they've got. So I see it as simple as like a WhatsApp group chat, that you've got your buddy on the WhatsApp, you ask them about something, and they're like, hey, okay, what does he think? And then they copy it another person. What does she think? They copy it another person. But instead of copying in other people, you're copying in AI twins of those people. So I think it's just going to be as simple as that. And then you're going to be like, here's Marcus and here's Marcus's AI. And it's just going to be something of a sort of an extension of you. Now, does everybody want to talk to that AI twin? Of course not. But does everybody want to talk to me? Of course not either. So then there's kind of this aspect that, you can kind of pick and choose which one do you want to kind of throw this question at or this task at? But I think it'll be as simple as that. One interesting thing that we've noticed is, especially in like different teams. So workplace is one, but I mean, it could be other type of teams and networks as well. It's an interesting question that if you get the question, for example, within a cohort of AI twins, that, hey, can Mark help me with this SQL structure, for example? And it might be that Mark's AI twin says that, hey, actually, Mark isn't the expert on this, but you should talk to Lucy. So one of the cool things that the AI twins can do is when they're kind of in this network, then they can also look at like, okay, what do I know? What is my expertise? And then based on that, if they essentially notice that my expertise for this question is actually not that high, then they could pull in a friend, which would be an AI twin, and say that, hey, I'm happy to give you my answer, but I actually think that this person will have a more credible answer to this question. So that's sort of where kind of we see that this network effect of the AI twins can go as well, that it's just shortening the path to somebody that has that relevant expertise, and then be able to kind of, ask the question from somebody that can be ultimately the most helpful.
And so are you building it as, I guess, a proprietary network where those twins talk to each other, or are there means for them to speak to other AIs?
That's a great question. I think the answer is that there's all sorts of networks in the world. We have our own network at Prifina, but I mean, that's not exclusive of any other network. So I think the way that it's going to go is that AI twins can belong to one or multiple networks. Some of those networks can have their own rules, like it can be an employer that has a closed off network where either you're part of that network and you can access it or you're not. Or
Yeah,
then it could be, for example, a network that we host at Prifina, which is opt-in, that anybody that wants a visibility to their AI twin and to be able to be discoverable, then they can go there and then they can essentially, in a way, compete. Because at the end of the day, the ones that score the highest on certain topics, they're the ones that are going to rise to the top. So
I
they can
see.
essentially kind of, they can become experts on that type of a scale. But I see that it's going to be everything. Like you're going to have all sorts of overlapping networks, and then you can essentially have different rules for those.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you plugged it into Facebook groups?
We haven't, so we've experimented with some distribution aspects, but we haven't really pushed anything too hard yet. Our marketing strategy is very simple. It's sort of like the Nike marketing strategy, that it's not about us. It's not about the AI twin. It's always about the individual. And that's kind of what we were trying to highlight also with this hub, which is what we call our market or our ecosystem. It's a hub at Prifina, and that's where essentially you can list an AI twin, we can market it, and you can kind of get discovered and find
I
new
see.
customers, new whatever.
Yeah.
But then a lot of the things that we do there, it's really about elevating individuals, because individuals create these AI twins with like the most fascinating areas of expertise,
Yeah.
and being able to essentially just find those. Like there's one guy that is, we have him on the website. He's riding a reindeer, and he's
Okay.
an expert on some, what's it called? I forget. I mean, some indigenous populations, and that
Okay.
expertise is fantastic. Or then, for example, there's a guy that used to be the European Union's ambassador to Moscow, and he's
Oh, wow.
somebody that met with Vladimir Putin, for example, 15 times, and he just published a book. So these types of things, like it's not really about, how should I say, it's not really about Wikipedia expertise like that you can read from Wikipedia or ChatGPT, but it's
Yeah.
really those things that, this guy that's met Putin 15 times, asking him how that was or how that changed over the years, or that's a fascinating, like, subjective personal expertise. And I think
Yeah.
kind of what the AI twins represent, that it's like why you call up a friend for their movie recommendations. I mean, you're not looking for like a Rotten Tomatoes score, you're looking for their opinion. So I
Hmm.
think this is true of the AI twins as well. But it actually doesn't kind of that workplace personal discussion. I mean, it's basically the same. That even if you go to some really, really competent and complicated profession like legal, for example, I mean, when you talk to a lawyer about something, you're not really asking about the objective interpretation of the law. You're rather looking at, like, yes, the law, but also their expertise, their judgment, and their perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the bit that, especially kind of that human opinion and like subject matter expertise, that's the thing
Hmm.
AI twins are fantastic for. And that's kind of what we want to elevate with that as well. Also publicly, but also then just kind of make sure that in different communities, then people can kind of take these positions that they have and then utilize the AI to really augment themselves.
And going back to where you were mentioning about your marketing, like how are you getting the word out about your product?
Yeah. So I mentioned that Nike marketing in terms of market the athlete, not the shoe. That's something that we're 100% bought into. But a lot of it is really through the word of mouth of the AI twins. So because of the way that we've targeted the first cohorts of AI twins, then when you have somebody on stage and they say that, hey, if you got questions, ask my AI twin, then that means that basically their network, like if they're front of three and a half thousand people, then I mean that network gets access to the AI twin.
Yeah.
And probably 10%, 11% say that, hey, that's pretty cool. I want to test that too. So that's kind of the primary aspect, that really boosting that ecosystem and footprint of the AI twins themselves, and making the AI twins then almost be able to recommend or reference or refer different clients. That's one part. Another part is that we have a cohort of about a little under 200 super users. And those
Hmm.
super users are folks that have built businesses around AI twins. They built like their own presence, their own expertise. They might offer AI twins to their communities. And these super users are such that they're early adopters, but they're also influencers in terms of our own roadmap. that we kind of can see that, for example, one of them has been working with a municipal leader in one of the, not necessarily the biggest cities, but, a prominent city anyway.
Mhm.
And they had this idea that what if this municipal leader brought AI twins to everybody in this city? Like just said that, hey, you now have essentially, like, we know that you're concerned about AI and how it's changing the workforce. Everybody has access to this AI twin as part of our city's initiative to learn what it means for them. So these types of super users are absolutely fundamental to us because as they kind of sit out and build out their own profiles in front of their communities, then they become the first ones that introduced AI twins to that type of community. And that's a really, really valuable position, not only for
Yeah, that's
because
huge.
they end up being like the spearhead for this, but also for us because we want to support those folks in terms of the ones that are all in and just make sure that they get as much success as they possibly can from essentially being able to utilize this AI twin. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, really looking at what type of impact those people are having. So
Yeah.
when we kind of think about that, and it's like network and it's like, just the actual product itself. But then I think the beating heart is the super users. That the super users, they're going to be the ones that are going to be really fantastic for us and also their communities going forward.
I love it. Yeah, you said it so well when you said the impact and touching on the communities, because who knows where these are going to go and how people are inherently creative. And then with tools like this at their, resources, they're able to just create and change and really make some impactful changes in their community, in their business lives, in their personal lives, etc. And yeah, it's got to be super, super fun to just be a part of that journey for them and to enable that.
And I think one thing that I've always been really, really amazed by is that human creativity. That when
Yeah.
you humans tools and say that, hey, here's a couple of things that we've seen work, but you do you, like you figure out where it works for
Yeah.
you. And then you kind of see like, people take them in such fantastic directions. And that's something where we're in the learning seat. Like we're looking out like, okay, these guys are doing that. How can we support them? How can we make it the biggest impact possible?
What would you say would be the next biggest challenge that you foresee needing to overcome because of, like, you've got your goal of spreading this, if you will, to multiple thousands of use cases. And what would be your biggest hurdle? Is it like compute power? Is it, I mean, I don't want
Yeah,
to put words in your mouth. So like,
I don't think it's anything that complicated. I think the biggest thing that we've seen as a challenge is that the professional use cases and these use cases where essentially people have a repeated function that they're performing, like they're repeatedly on stage, they've authored a book, they're promoting the book, they're selling their expertise. They're like, we have professors in over 100 universities that are using this kind of with their classes. So
hmm,
if you got that type of utility driven function, it's logical that, the adoption of the AI twin, it kind of follows that function. I think the next immediate challenge that we have is that as we go deeper into that, anybody can have an AI twin and everybody should have an AI twin. Then how do we package the product in a way that it is as conducive and engaging, not engaging in a way that you're essentially just buried in it, but rather that it's essentially helping you get to your goals? Then this is one of the next key challenges that we have that, like you said, because there's thousands of different use cases. Then how do we make it something that, it's very, very easy and intuitive to get started with so that you kind of get the engine kind of ramping up, even if you're not in that type of utility driven role. And I
hmm,
think this is where our bets are on voice and our bets are on private use, that you can essentially get your own AI twin that you talk to, and that
hmm.
AI twin essentially uses the dialogue to get an understanding of how it can help you. But again, with all of that ownership, that it's just serving your interests. We have no data as a company. It's just all about you. Because I think that voice is one of those universal tools for humans that we like talking to other humans and we
Oh
like
yeah.
in general. So that's kind of that. But I think essentially leaning into just the users, just finding new super users, finding new of those community leaders and those lightning rods of this. I mean, I think that playbook is going to be the same for us, that we just essentially make sure that users have an easy way of starting to test things out. And then that we're there, that when they essentially say that, hey, this is super cool, then we can just look at how do we make them the most successful possible in whatever function role they have across the use cases.
And for those of us that already have, we'll say, like a segmented AIs working for us, like, I've got some in my socials, or I've got one in my socials, I've got one in my email, but those are like independent of each other. And then, now GPT, I have those conversations with them. And then so with Prifina, is there a way that like all of those get integrated to kind of have the same framework and being able to reference off of each other?
So I think there is a convergence that will happen across tools over time. That's something that right now they are rather independent. And they're also rather, I mean, gosh, I don't even know how many AI tools I use personally. But I mean, if you looked at them and audited them, you'd probably say that, hey, you got like 7 tools that do the exact same things. So I'm sure there will be a consolidation and there will be that type of interoperability. I think the question is rather that right now it's sort of a question of the entire landscape is moving so much that my view, for example, on like fine tuning models is that it's absolutely irrelevant in our universe. Because, for example, in our universe, if there's 5 new models that are released in 3 months that are orders of magnitude better, then I mean, the fine tuning is just going to be a wasted effort. But if you're a corporate that's building on a very specific data set and essentially needs control, then it's very, very different. But when you've got when you've got 1,000 different use cases and millions of an audience that are all unique, then I mean, you have to kind of be a little fluid in the approach. So that's why essentially some of these principles that we have is that we separate the data from the model. And that means that when there's new models and when there's new fantastic tools, you can just use the data with all of those. And right now that's sort of in our universe of AI twins, starting with the public ones, the private ones, and then these other ones, these other role-based ones that we have. But then I see that that's absolutely going to be something where you can just plug more into different types of MCPs, different types of services, and either push and pull different information that you've got there. But I think we're probably going to have to accept that over the next 12 months or so. Then I kind of tell people that, it's really important that they get started and they figure out how their workspace looks. But they should also expect that the tools that they're going to be using in 3 months and 6 months and 9 months, they probably will have chosen or traded the tools already 5 times for each. That it's not about the tools. It's rather about like, how do we just figure out how do we use them and what do we kind of have? Because I think that everything is still so much in flux that there's still so much development in the tools themselves. But I do see that in the future, you're going to have your AI twin is going to have a lot of context about you, and it's going to be able to orchestrate and manage a lot of agents on your behalf. So I definitely see that, but it's just a question like when it's feasible to start pulling those strings together.
And do you see any other kind of big level trends emerging on, say, the forefront over the next 1 or 2 years in AI?
That's a fantastic question. I think one thing is, which we touched on at the start of the episode, is that basically everything's up for grabs right now. And then when I say everything, what I mean is what I've been thinking about, like, what should we do a new website with, for example? What type of technology should we use? And those technologies that we used, a couple of years ago, I mean, they're not the ones that we should use anymore. Like, for example, even things that, CMSs and things that we've had, then they're not going to survive. So I think that one universal thing is that if you can nowadays basically create bespoke software for your use case at the cost or lower than bringing in a third-party specialist or even a SaaS tool, I mean, why wouldn't you just create it yourself?
Sure.
So this is kind of something that I think it's not just individual, but it's especially an enterprise side as well, that if you've been paying 9 figures for a system, that now your engineers are like, we can create a similar type of setup using LLMs in 2 months, then even though that's sort of a laughable position, then I mean, it kind of becomes this question of, do we go into an era of custom programming now, but just doing it with AI? And does that really eliminate SaaS companies, for example? So that's, I think, a fascinating thing. But I think it kind of goes back to this, that the entire landscape is changing. And there's going to be
So
a huge
quickly
market
too.
of people that actually build these types of things and come up with new ways of commanding market share going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And in relationship to the human intelligence staying, creative and such a key part of it, how do you see the collaboration between the humans and the AI in regards to their job roles?
One thing that I've been doing there's a company called Diaglo, where I'm on the board, and their CTO is an ex-NASA mathematician, Paul.
Uh-huh.
And one thing that we've realized is that people are gonna, we're kind of going to this calculator dilemma again, which is that you got this really, really cool TI-85 calculator and you can punch it off different things,
Yeah.
but how do you understand if the output is actually right or wrong?
Yeah.
So the LLMs are sort of like that calculator dilemma on steroids and with a couple MBAs. That it's got all of the confidence, it will sell you absolutely everything, but how do you know if it's actually real? And
Yeah.
I think this is where that human backbone and creativity comes in, that you need to have a even higher grasp of the universe going forward. Like, because you need to kind of be able to deal with this calculator dilemma on a scale that we haven't dealt with in the past. Like,
That's
yes,
true.
most people will kind of go in and they'll just say that I will just implicitly trust it because I can't verify. But I think especially for your audience and your network and so on and so forth, and I think that that's kind of the golden ticket. So what Paul and the Diaglo team are doing is they've essentially got an internal training program where they just basically go through fundamentals. Like, what are the fundamental, like, scientific formulas that basically govern the entire world? And how do they come to be? And, not necessarily math, but more like philosophy and more like, just human development. So I think,
Okay.
even though that's just one small specific thing, I do think that that type of thing becomes much more relevant, that it's not just being able to do the task, it's figuring out which task is actually worth doing, and
Mm.
also finding out that, okay, where are there gaps? Because yes, the AI tools are going to just get better, and the orchestration of the AI tools and the direction of the AI tools, that's only just going to get better. But at the same time, that's kind of where those edge cases, those counterpoint, which the AI, I mean, it's a statistical machine at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
it's have a certain regression to the mean. So outliers is something that humans are actually quite good at. But how to spot them, then that requires brain power, and that requires patience and expertise and depth and things like that. So I think it's along those lines that I see. But again, I look at that with huge optimism, that that's like, for folks that looking at how do I leverage AI? I mean, all it takes is attitude and then the, willingness to learn. And then after that, just kind of getting into using them right now. And I mean, we're not at the stage that, AI is taking over everything today. Like, there is still a lot of time to kind of,
No.
figure things out and kind of get involved and pick things up. But I think it's also something that the sooner that people start with that, then the more it will pay off. Because right now, I mean, that is such a differentiator in terms of being able to figure out, like, how to deal with this and how do you credibly solve problems in a way that, you actually understood what went on in the black box to begin with.
Very well said, Marcus. You're a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, it clearly shines through, all the effort and thought that you've put into your product, and having it be, really just a true extension of someone, really as their twin. And I love the idea of how you're saying, all of the data, it's individually owned, right? And so that sense of respecting the proprietary, individualistic, humanistic aspects of it, while allowing the technology to be its ungoverned self where appropriate. It's just so exciting,
I think
man.
it's also like when we think about the future of I think it's a very fundamental thing. Like, do we want to have AIs that are just governed by companies, or do we want to have AIs that we ourselves control as well?
Right.
That's a very clear position that we've taken, that we have to build those things that individuals actually own and control as well.
Indeed. Yep. Very well said. Fantastic. Well, Markus, this has been great. How can people find you off the podcast, online? Where can they reach out to you? How can they experience your AI twin, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to prifina.com. And actually, from there's a tab called questions. So it has my AI twin linked. So you can just ask that guy anything that you want. That guy is in some ways a lot better than me, speaks so many more languages than I do, doesn't get tired, things like that. But at the same time, obviously, I'm always super interested in finding out new use cases for the AI twins. So that's where you can find me on LinkedIn, same name. But that's where essentially, if you got an idea for the AI twins or what you might want to do with this, I mean, hit me up. That's really the coolest part of my job, figuring out how do we get this technology into folks' hands and then just see where they take it. Like, that is truly the best thing about this role.
That is so fun. That's awesome. But again, thank you so very much. And all the best. I really appreciate your being on the pod.
Absolutely. A lot of fun.
Very good.